Commander Yuki's coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering against the metal floor of the command bridge. The hot liquid splashed across his boots, but he didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the holographic display floating before him, showing signal patterns that made his veteran mind reel with disbelief. "Run it again," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. Lieutenant Vextel's forearms danced across the control panel, his scaled skin turning a pale blue with nervousness. The Zephyrian had served under Yuki for 3 years, and he'd never seen his commander look so shaken. "Sir, I've run the analysis 7 times. The signal is definitely coming from the Cell-3 system, and the encryption, ... It's using quantum fold algorithms that shouldn't exist." The bridge fell silent, except for the steady beeping of the long-range sensors. Dr. Narration. The ship's xenobiologist floated closer in her environmental suit. Her gaseous form swirled with agitation inside the containment field. "Commander, with respect, this has to be some kind of mistake. Sol-3 is a death world. Nothing intelligent could survive there." Yuki rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his 40 years in space service. He'd explored nebulae that could crush a starship, fought pirates in the asteroid fields of Kepler-7, and survived first contact with 3 different hostile species. But this was different. This was the stuff of legends and nightmares, told in spacer bars across the galaxy. "Pull up the archival footage," he ordered, his voice steadying as his military training took over. The probe missions from 2847 and 2851, the holographic display shifted, showing grainy images that made everyone on the bridge lean forward. The first probe had lasted exactly 47 minutes on Sol-3's surface before something tore it apart. The second probe had been smarter, staying in orbit and using long-range scanners. What it found had terrified the Galactic Council so much that they'd immediately classified Sol-3 as forbidden territory. "Look at this," Yuki said, pointing to a section of the recording. The image showed a vast blue and green world, beautiful from space, but hiding horrors beneath its swirling white clouds. Surface gravity is 1.2 times standard. Atmospheric composition includes 21% oxygen. That's enough to make most species dizzy from oxygen poisoning. Ocean coverage is 71%, with massive storms that can level continents. Lieutenant Vextel's skin had turned completely white now. "Sir, the temperature variations alone would kill most life forms. From -42 plus 50 degrees Celsius, sometimes changing in a single planetary rotation." "And that's just the beginning," Dr. Narration added, her gaseous form pulsing with anxiety. The probe detected volcanic activity, seismic events that registered 9.0 on the Richter scale, and electromagnetic storms that could fry our ship's computer systems. But the worst part, ... She paused, accessing her personal files. New images appeared. On the display, creatures that defied logic. Massive beasts with razor-sharp teeth, smaller ones that moved in coordinated packs. And strangest of all, bipedal figures that seemed to command the others. The apex predators, Yuki breathed. They showed intelligence, tool use, organization. The creatures in the footage moved with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. They hunted in groups, communicated with complex signals, and, worst of all, they seemed to adapt to every challenge their hellish world threw at them. When the probe scanners tried to catalog them, the creatures had actually looked up at the sky as if they knew they were being watched. "Sir?" Vextel said suddenly, his voice cracking with fear. "The signal is getting stronger." The beacon's message repeated, each transmission clearer than the last. Static gave way to an unmistakably intelligent voice speaking in perfect galactic standard, the universal language used for trade and diplomacy across known space. "This is Admiral Day of the Terran Republic Fleet. We have received distress signal, Del-27. 7 from coordinates 847.3 by 291.7 in what you call Council space. Our long-range scouts report a vessel matching the signature of our exploration. Ship Pioneer went missing in your Sector 43 standard days ago. The Terran Republic does not abandon its citizens. We are mobilizing a rescue fleet and will arrive in your system within 72 hours. We come in peace, but we will not be turned away." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Yuki felt his mouth go dry as the implications hit him like a physical blow. Not only were the creatures of SAL-3 real, but they had somehow developed faster than light travel, organized themselves into a republic, and were now heading directly into council space. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. Vextel checked his sensors, his forearms trembling as he worked. "Sir, I'm reading 12 massive signatures. Each one is roughly 3 times the size of our largest dreadnoughts. They're moving in perfect formation, and their energy readings are ... unprecedented." Dr. Nurikatz's gaseous form had begun swirling faster, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. "Commander, what if they're hostile? What if this rescue mission is just an excuse to scout our defenses? We know nothing about their intentions or capabilities, beyond their ability to survive on a world that would kill any of us in minutes."
Yuki
stared at the tactical display, watching his 12 red dots moved steadily toward council space. Each represented a ship built by creatures who had clawed their way to the top of the food chain on the galaxy's most dangerous world. Ships crewed by beings who had evolved to survive conditions that would crush, poison, freeze, burn, or simply drive insane any other known species. "Sir, what are your orders?" Vextel asked, his young voice betraying his fear. Yuki's hand hovered over the emergency alert button that would summon the entire council fleet. Once pressed, there would be no going back. The galaxy would know that humanity was real, that they were coming, and that everything everyone thought they knew about the universe was about to change forever. The beacon crackled once more, and Admiral Day's voice filled the bridge again. "Be advised. Council vessels, we are not looking for a fight, but we will not leave our people behind. That is not the human way. Prepare for our arrival." The transmission cut to static, and in that moment of silence, Yuki made the decision that would reshape galactic history. His finger pressed down on the alert button and across council space. Emergency beacons began broadcasting a message that would send entire civilizations into panic. The Deathworlders were coming, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber burst open with a thunderous crash that echoed throughout the crystalline halls of the space station. Representatives from 47 different species rushed through the entrance, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, telepathic pulses, and translated speech that filled the air with urgent panic. "Hi." Counselor Zetamar, a towering insectoid whose carapace gleamed under the chamber's artificial lights, struck his ceremonial staff against the floor 3 times. The sound reverberated through the room like a gong, but the chaos continued. Species that had maintained diplomatic relations for centuries were now shouting over each other in fear. "Order. I demand order." Zetamar's mandibles clicked rapidly. As he spoke, his translator converting his native language into galactic standard. "We are the Galactic Council, not a marketplace during a food shortage." Dr. Calithic floated to the center of the chamber in her mobility sphere, her tentacled form writhing with nervous energy behind the transparent aluminum. As the Council's chief xenobiologist, she had spent the last 6 hours reviewing every piece of data about SAL-3 that existed in their archives. What she had found would change everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustic systems. "I present to you evidence that will challenge our understanding of what is possible in this galaxy." The holographic projectors hummed to life, filling the vast space above the council floor with images that made several representatives gasp in horror. SAL-3 hung in the void like a blue and white jewel, beautiful and deadly. But it was the surface scans that truly terrified the assembled beings. "Observe the gravitational readings," Dr. Kalathic said, manipulating the display with her neural interface. 1.2 times standard gravity. For comparison, this level of gravitational force would crush the bones of 70% of Council species. Within minutes, the Altarians would suffer organ failure. The Vexillians would be unable to maintain their gaseous form. Even our strongest species, the Chronari, would struggle to move effectively. Ambassador Veltar, representing the Trade Federation, leaned forward in his crystalline chair. His transparent body flickered with nervous light patterns.
We know.
Intelligent life could develop under such conditions. That's what we believed, Dr. Kalathic replied, her tentacles curling with excitement despite the grim subject matter. But watch this footage from Probe Mission 2851. The display shifted to show surface-level recordings. What the Council saw defied logic. Creatures that moved with fluid grace despite the crushing gravity, their bipedal forms navigating terrain that would challenge military vehicles. But it wasn't just their movement that was impressive, it was their behavior. Notice how they coordinate. Dr. Kalethic highlighted a group of the creatures as they pursued what appeared to be prey. Perfect communication, tactical planning, tool usage. And observe their endurance. They maintain this pace for standard hours without rest. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The Zephyrian representative's scales turned pale blue, a sign of extreme distress among his people. What are they hunting? The display zoomed in to show their quarry, a massive creature with razor-sharp claws and teeth that could shred starship hull plating. It was 3 times the size of the bipedal hunters, with natural armor that looked impenetrable. Smaller creatures pursued it relentlessly, working together with a precision that spoke of intelligence far beyond simple animal cunning. They call it a bear, Dr. Kalethic said, reading from her data files. And according to our linguistic analysis of their communications, they consider it a relatively minor threat. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Ambassador Veltar's light patterns flickered rapidly. Minor threat? That creature could single-handedly destroy one of our scout ships. It gets worse, Dr. Kalathic continued, advancing to the next set of images. Flu-3's weather systems are completely unpredictable. Observe these phenomena they call hurricanes, atmospheric disturbances, with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. They can level entire cities, yet the humans simply ... adapt. The footage showed structures that bent with the wind. Instead of breaking vehicles that could navigate through conditions that would ground their most advanced aircraft. But most disturbing of all, it showed humans walking calmly through environments that should have killed them instantly. Their adaptability is unprecedented, Dr. Kalethic explained, her voice growing more concerned with each revelation. They survive in frozen wastelands where the temperature drops to -40 degrees, then thrive in desert regions where it soars to +50 degrees. They swim in bodies of water filled with predators, climb mountains that reach into the stratosphere, and somehow, they do it all while maintaining complex social structures. Commander Yuki stood from his position at the Defense Council table, his weathered face grave with the weight of his knowledge. Dr. Kalathic, show them the tool usage footage. The display changed again, and this time the assembled representatives saw something that chilled them to their cores. The bipedal creatures weren't just using simple tools, they were manufacturing complex devices, building structures that defied the hostile environment, and most terrifyingly, they appeared to be developing technology. This footage is over 200 years old, Yuki announced, his voice cutting through the shocked silence. If they were this advanced then, imagine what they've accomplished now. They've somehow achieved faster than light travel, organized themselves into something called the Terran Republic, and they're heading directly for our space. A Chronari war chief, his massive frame covered in ceremonial battle scars, slammed his fist on his designated speaking platform. Then, we mobilize the fleet. If these Deathworlders think they can intimidate the Council with what? Yuki interrupted sharply. Our weapons are designed to fight species that evolved in comfortable environments. Our ships are built for beings who need regulated atmosphere, controlled gravity, and predictable conditions. These humans evolved in conditions that would kill us before we could even deploy our forces. Dr. Kalethic manipulated the display once more, showing comparative analysis charts that painted a grim picture. Consider this. Our strongest warriors require powered exoskeletons to function in one. 1. G gravity. These humans evolved in 2G as their baseline. Our fastest ships can withstand temperature variations of 50 degrees. They're homeworld subjects. Them 2 temperature swings of over 90 degrees regularly. The Altarian Fleet Admiral, a decorated veteran of 3 major conflicts, spoke up from his position. What about their numbers? Surely a death world couldn't support a large population. That's perhaps the most terrifying aspect, Dr. Kolothic replied, pulling up population estimates. Based on energy consumption patterns detected by our deep space monitoring stations, we estimate SAL-3 supports between 7 and 9 billion of these humans. Billion, not million. The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. Most council species numbered their populations in the millions, with only the most successful reaching into the low billions. The idea that a death world could support such massive numbers while still producing individuals capable of interstellar travel was beyond their comprehension. Ambassador Veltar's light patterns had shifted to deep red, indicating pure terror among his people. 9 billion apex predators from a world that considers our worst nightmares to be minor inconveniences, all united under a single government with technology advanced enough for interstellar travel. And they're coming here, Yuki finished. Grimly, in 72 hours we're going to discover firsthand what evolution in hell produces when it reaches for the stars. The council chamber fell into stunned silence as the full implications finally sank in. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, 12 massive ships crewed by creatures that had conquered the most hostile world in known space were approaching council territory. And nobody had any idea whether they came as friends or as the galaxies. New apex predators ready to claim their place at the top of the food chain. The fabric of space itself seemed to ripple and tear as 12 massive shapes materialized from the void. Reality bent around them as they dropped out of hyperspace, with mathematical precision that defied everything the Council fleet knew about faster-than-light travel. The ships emerged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming dully under the light of the Altarian sun. Admiral Day stepped forward on the bridge of the Indomitable, his boots echoing against the reinforced metal deck plating. At 53 years old, his face carried the weathered look of someone who had spent decades battling Earth storms, earthquakes, and predators. His gray hair was cropped military short, and his dark eyes held the steady calm of a man who had seen worse things than alien starships. "Status report," he said simply, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had made him a legend in the Terran Republic fleet. "Lieutenant." Commander Hannah looked up from her communications console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. That would have baffled most alien species. "Sir, we're receiving multiple scanning attempts from the local defense force. They're running deep penetration scans on our hulls, weapons systems, and crew quarters." Captain June laughed from her position at the tactical station. "They're trying to scan us?" It's adorable. She was younger than the Admiral, maybe with the kind of lean muscle that came from growing up in Earth's higher gravity. Her hands moved across her controls with the fluid precision of a concert pianist. "Sir, their scanning technology is about 50 years behind ours. They can't even penetrate our outer hull plating." The bridge around them was a marvel of human engineering built to withstand conditions that would crush most alien vessels. Every surface was reinforced, every system had triple redundancy, and the entire structure could operate in environments that ranged from the crushing depths of Earth's oceans to the freezing vacuum of space. It wasn't just a starship, it was a fortress designed by beings who understood that the universe was actively trying to kill them. Admiral Hannah called out, "Incoming transmission from the lead council vessel. It's in Galactic Standard." Day raised an eyebrow. "They know our language?" "Apparently so, sir. Should I put them through?" The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that looked like it was made of living crystal. "Ambassador." Veltar's transparent body was shot through with veins of nervous light that pulsed rapidly. It a clear sign of fear among his species, though the humans had no way of knowing that. "Unknown vessels?" Veltar began. His voice translated through universal communicators. "You have entered Council space without proper authorization protocols. Identify yourselves immediately and state your intentions, or we will be forced to." Consider you hostile. Admiral Day stepped forward, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. I am Admiral Day of the Terran Republic Fleet. We're responding to a distress signal from this sector. One of our research vessels, the Pioneer, went missing in your Space 43 standard days ago. We're here to conduct a search and rescue operation for our missing crew. The alien ambassador's light patterns shifted to deep red, and his crystalline form began to vibrate slightly. Impossible. Terran Republic. You claim to be from Sol 3? That's a classified death world. No intelligent life could possibly survive there, let alone develop interstellar capability. Captain June snorted with amusement.
No intelligent
Life, buddy. We've got 9 billion people back home who might disagree with that assessment. Velta's form flickered with what humans would later learn was pure terror. 9 billion? From a Class 12 death world? The population density alone should have caused ecosystem collapse centuries ago. Look, Admiral Day said patiently. We're not here to discuss our homeworld's carrying capacity. Just want to find our people and go home. Our long-range sensors detected the wreckage of the Pioneer approximately 4 light hours from your position. We'd appreciate your cooperation in conducting the rescue operation. Rescue operation? Veltar's voice climbed higher. Your people couldn't possibly have survived in Council space. Our environmental systems, our radiation levels, our gravitational variations, they're all completely hostile to Death World species. Lieutenant Commander Hannah looked up from her sensor readings, her expression puzzled. Sir, I'm detecting elevated stress hormones from the alien crew. Their heart rates are spiking across the board. Hostile environment? Captain June interrupted, her voice filled with genuine confusion. Are you serious? Your space environment registers 0. 9G standard gravity. It's oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere at comfortable pressure, and radiation levels that are barely detectable. This is like a luxury cruise compared to what we deal with back home. The color patterns. In Veltar's crystalline body began shifting rapidly between red and blue. On his ship's bridge, panic was spreading among the Council fleet personnel. Readings from the human vessels showed technology that was decades ahead of anything in their databases. Hull plating that could withstand direct hits from their most powerful weapons and energy signatures that suggested power sources beyond their understanding. Sir, whispered his tactical officer, a 6-legged creature whose carapace was now clicking with nervous energy. Their ships they're not just military vessels. They're built like mobile fortresses. Look at these hull composition readings. That's not standard starship armor. That's something designed to survive planetary impacts. Admiral Day noticed the increasing agitation on the alien ship and tried to defuse the situation. Ambassador, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. We're not looking for trouble. We just want to. His words were cut off as alarms began blaring throughout the Council. Fleet. A young, inexperienced Zephyrian sensor operator on the Council flagship had mistaken the human ship's routine deep space scanning array for a weapons lock. In his panic, he triggered the automatic defense protocols. Sir, Captain June shouted. From her station, the Council fleet is powering weapons. I'm reading energy spikes across their entire formation. Admiral Day's expression hardened. Are they targeting us? Affirmative. Multiple weapons locks detected. The communication channel with Ambassador Veltar dissolved into static as his ship's defensive systems came online. On the Council flagship, Veltar was shouting orders, trying to countermand the automatic response. But it was too late. The first shots came from the Council fleet, brilliant beams of coherent energy that lanced across space toward the human vessels. The weapons were powerful enough to vaporize asteroids, designed by species that had fought wars across the galaxy for millennia. They struck the Indomitable's hull and simply ... dispersed. The energy scattered across the ship's armor plating, like rain on a mountain, causing no more damage than a flashlight beam. Well, Captain June said dryly, checking her damage control displays. That was disappointing. Should we respond, sir? Admiral Day's jaw tightened. He had hoped to avoid this exact scenario. All ships, defensive positions, turn fire. But keep it minimal. Disable their weapons systems only. We're not here to start a war. What happened next would be remembered as the shortest naval engagement in galactic history. The human ships moved with a fluid grace that defied their massive size, their hulls shrugging off weapons fire that should have crippled them. The return fire was precise, surgical, and devastatingly effective. Within 7 minutes, the entire Council fleet was drifting dead in space, their weapon systems fused and their engines offline. Not a single human ship had suffered so much as a scratch on their paint. Admiral Day stared at the tactical display, feeling a familiar weight settle on his shoulders. He had come here to rescue his people, not to demonstrate humanity's military superiority to a galaxy that clearly wasn't ready for the truth about what evolution in hell could produce. "Open a channel to the Council flagship," he ordered quietly. "Channel open, sir. Ambassador Veltar. This is Admiral Day. Are you receiving?" The response came through heavy static, Veltar's voice shaky with shock and fear. We receive. "You, Admiral, Ambassador. We didn't come here to fight. But we won't be shot at either. Now, can we please discuss this rescue operation like civilized beings?" The galaxy was about to learn its first lesson about humanity. They preferred to talk, but they were very good at fighting. Captain Minho stepped through the breached airlock of the Council. Dreadnought, with the quiet confidence of a man who had survived 23 years on Earth, at 41, carried himself with the fluid grace that came from a lifetime of navigating a world that constantly tried to kill its inhabitants. His dark eyes swept the alien corridor, taking in details that would have overwhelmed most beings: the slightly lower gravity, the different atmospheric composition, the unfamiliar architecture that somehow felt predictable. "Feels like a luxury. Hotel in here," he murmured into his cum, his voice barely above a whisper. Behind him, his boarding team of 12 humans moved through the ship's passages like shadows given form. Each one was a veteran of Earth's special forces, trained in environments that ranged from the crushing depths of the Pacific Ocean to the frozen peaks of the Himalayas. Sergeant Bo crouched at the intersection ahead, his enhanced hearing picking up sounds that the ship's alien crew probably thought were silent. "Sir, I count 24 hostiles setting up defensive positions in the main corridor. They've got some kind of energy barriers and what looks like automated defense turrets." Smiled grimly. The Council forces had no idea what they were dealing with. These aliens had evolved on worlds with comfortable gravity, predictable weather, and environments that didn't require constant vigilance just to survive another day. They thought in terms of conventional warfare, fixed positions, overwhelming firepower, technological superiority. "Standard Earth doctrine, people," Minho said softly. "Remember, we're not trying to kill anyone. These are scared beings defending their ship. Use minimum necessary force." The team acknowledged with hand, signals that had been developed in Earth's most dangerous jungles, where verbal communication could mean death. They spread out through the ship's maintenance passages, moving with the kind of three-dimensional thinking that came naturally to beings would learn to navigate cities built vertically into cliff faces and forests where predators could attack. From any direction, in the main corridor, Commander Yuki crouched behind an energy barrier with his elite marine unit. These were the best soldiers the Altarian Defense Force had to offer, beings who had trained for decades in zero-gravity combat, asteroid warfare, and ship-to-ship boarding actions. They were confident, well-equipped, and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. "Contact," whispered one of his marines, a Zephyrian whose scales had turned the deep blue of combat readiness. "I'm reading movement in the ventilation systems." "Impossible," Yuki replied, checking his tactical display. "Those passages are too narrow for armored troops, and the atmosphere in there would be toxic to most species." What he didn't understand was that humans had spent millions of years learning to move through spaces that other creatures couldn't imagine navigating. They had crawled through caves, climbed through jungle canopies, and squeezed through urban ruins during countless wars. The ship's maintenance passages weren't obstacles, they were highways. The first sign that something was wrong came when the lights went out, not just dimmed, completely dark. The humans had found the ship's power distribution center and selectively shut down the illumination systems while leaving life support intact. In the absolute darkness, the Council Marines activated their night vision systems, casting the corridor in an eerie green glow. Movement. 3 o'clock. One of them shouted, firing his plasma rifle at a shadow that seemed to dance between the support pillars. The energy bolt struck the wall where the figure had been a split second before, leaving a glowing crater in. The alien metal? Then the humans struck from everywhere at once, Captain. Minho dropped through a ceiling vent directly behind the defensive line, landing in the reduced gravity with the silent grace of a cat. His first opponent? A heavily armored Chronari warrior, spun to face him with a weapon that could punch through starship hull plating. Minho simply stepped aside, grabbed the alien's weapon arm, and used the creature's own momentum to send him crashing into the wall. The impact would have killed a human. The Chronari just went to sleep. Sergeant Bo emerged from a side passage like a ghost, moving through the alien marines with techniques that had been perfected in Earth's urban warfare. Zones. Each movement was precise, economical, designed to neutralize without killing. A pressure point here, a joint lock there. And alien soldiers who had never faced opponents who moved like living weapons found themselves on the deck, unconscious but unharmed. The entire engagement lasted exactly 14 seconds. When the emergency lighting came back on, Commander Yuki found himself staring up at Captain Minho, who stood over him with hands that could crush steel but held a medical scanner instead of a weapon. "You're in shock," Minho said simply, his voice carrying the kind of calm authority that came from decades of command in impossible situations. "Your heart rate is elevated, but you're not injured. Neither are your people." Around the corridor, Yuki could see his entire elite marine unit lying unconscious on the deck. Not dead, not wounded, just efficiently neutralized by beings who moved like they had been born in zero gravity and thought faster than his tactical computers. "How?" Yuki whispered, his voice barely audible. Minho knelt beside him, offering a hand up. "You fight like beings who evolved in safe environments. We fight like beings who evolved in hell. Every day on Earth is combat training against weather, against predators, against a world that never stops trying to kill us. Your soldiers are brave, but they've never faced opponents who learned warfare from surviving childhood on a death world." Meanwhile, across the Council fleet, similar scenes were playing out on every ship. Human boarding teams moved through alien vessels like they were touring museums, their Earth-trained reflexes and combat instincts allowing them to navigate unfamiliar environments with terrifying efficiency. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Day watched the tactical displays with growing concern. Not for his forces, they were performing exactly as expected. His concern was for the alien crews, who had found themselves facing opponents they couldn't possibly understand. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Ray from her communications station, "Captain Su reports the Council flagship is secured. No casualties. Among our forces, minimal injuries among the alien crew. They're requesting medical assistance for shock and minor trauma." "Same story across the board, Admiral," added Captain June from Tactical. "The Council forces, they just weren't ready. For this kind of engagement, their weapons can't penetrate our armor. Their tactics assume opponents who think like they do, and their physical capabilities." She trailed off, not wanting to sound dismissive of beings who were clearly brave and well-trained by their own standards. Admiral Day understood. This wasn't conquest. It was a fundamental mismatch between species that had evolved under completely different circumstances. The Council forces were fighting with the tactics and equipment of beings who had developed in relatively safe environments. His crews were responding with the overwhelming efficiency of apex predators who had clawed their way to the top of the food chain on the galaxy's most dangerous world. "Admiral came," Captain Minho's voice over the com. "Council flagship is secure. All alien personnel are alive and receiving medical attention. Commander Yuki is requesting to speak with you directly." Day closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command that he had carried for so many years. He had come here to rescue his people, not to demonstrate humanity's military superiority to a galaxy that clearly wasn't prepared for the reality of what Deathworld evolution could produce. "Patch him through," he said quietly. Commander Yuki's image appeared on the screen, his alien features showing exhaustion and something that might have been awe. "Admiral, your people. They could have killed us all in the first 30 seconds. Instead, they treated our wounded and made sure we were comfortable. I don't understand." Admiral Day looked at the alien commander with eyes that had seen too much conflict, too much death, too much unnecessary violence. "Commander, we didn't come here to fight. We came here to bring our people home. That's what humans do. We protect our own, and we try not to hurt others in the process." The bridge fell silent as the implications of the engagement became clear. Humanity had just demonstrated that they possessed military capabilities that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, but more importantly, they had shown restraint, compassion, and a dedication to preserving life even in the midst of combat. The question now was what the galaxy would do with this knowledge, and whether this first contact would lead to understanding, or to the kind of fear that could tear civilizations apart. The conference room aboard the Indomitable felt like stepping into another world for Commander Yuki. The walls were lined with what appeared to be actual wood, material so rare in space that most species considered it mythical. The table was made from some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. The chairs were designed for beings who lived in higher gravity than anything the Council had ever encountered. Yuki sat across from Admiral Day, his hands still, trembling slightly from the shock of everything he had witnessed. The human admiral looked relaxed, almost casual, as he reviewed holographic displays showing the wreckage of the Pioneer scattered across an asteroid field. But there was something in his dark eyes that spoke of depths Yuki couldn't fathom. The look of someone who had seen too much death and decided to spend his life preventing more of it. "I keep thinking about what happened out there," Yuki began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your boarding teams could have killed every being on my ship in the first 10 seconds. Instead, they treated our wounded and made sure we were comfortable. I've been a soldier for 30 years, Admiral, and I've never seen anything like it." Admiral Day set down the datapad he had been studying and looked directly at the alien commander. "Commander, let me ask you something. Spaceflight. What was the first thing you did?" Yuki blinked, confused by the change of subject. We explored nearby systems, looked for resources, habitable worlds. And when you encountered other species, we established trade relationships, defensive alliances, standard diplomatic protocols." Day nodded slowly. "That's what most species do. Humans, we did something different. The first thing we did when we reached the stars was set up rescue stations, emergency beacons, medical facilities, search and rescue teams. Because on Earth, the #1 rule isn't expand your territory or gather resources. It's nobody gets left behind." Captain June looked up from her tactical station, where she had been monitoring the rescue operation preparations. "We've got a lock on the Pioneer's black box. Looks like they survived the crash, but they're in bad shape. Radiation exposure, limited life support." "How long do we have?" Day asked. "Already standing. It's maybe 6 hours before their air recyclers fail completely." Commander Yuki watched as the human bridge crew transformed from casual conversation to focused action in the span of seconds. There was no panic, no shouting, just smooth efficiency that spoke of countless hours training for exactly this kind of emergency. Commander Admiral Day said, turning back to Yuki. "Would you like to see what humans are really about? You're welcome to observe the rescue operation." 3 hours later, Yuki found himself in the observation deck of a human rescue shuttle watching something that redefined his understanding of what was possible. The Pioneer had crashed into an asteroid that was spinning through space at incredible speed. Its hull breached in 17 places. Its crew trapped in compartments that were slowly losing atmosphere. The human rescue teams approached the wreckage like they were performing a delicate surgery. Captain Minho, the same man who had single-handedly neutralized Yuki's entire security team, now moved through the twisted wreckage with tools that seemed designed specifically for this kind of operation. "Careful. With that support beam," Minho's voice came through the CUM system. "If it shifts, we'll lose the entire aft section." Yuki watched in fascination as the humans worked. They moved in the spinning, unstable environment, like they had been born in zero gravity. Their movements coordinated with mathematical precision. But what struck him most was their gentleness. These same beings who had torn through his ship's defenses like they were made of paper, now handled injured crew members with the care of parents tending to their children. "Look at this," Dr. Kalathic whispered from beside him. The councils. Xenobiologist had been recording everything, her tentacles writhing with excitement. They're not just rescuing their own people, they're stabilizing the entire wreckage to prevent it from breaking apart. They're thinking about preserving the ship itself, the data, everything. Through the observation window, Yuki could see human medics working on injured crew members inside makeshift medical bays they had constructed from salvaged materials. Their equipment was centuries ahead of anything in the Council's medical arsenal. But more importantly, their knowledge seemed to encompass treatment for injuries that most species had never even considered possible to survive. That crew member there, Dr. Calithic pointed to a figure on a medical stretcher, has been exposed to levels of cosmic radiation that should have killed him days ago. But look, they're actually reversing the cellular damage. How is that possible, Yuki asked? Because humans have been dealing with radiation exposure for millennia, came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Lieutenant Commander Hannah, who had joined them in the observation deck. Earth has radiation zones, solar flares, cosmic ray bombardment. Our ancestors learned to treat radiation sickness before they learned to prevent it. The rescue operation continued for another 2 hours, with human teams working in shifts to extract every piece of salvageable equipment and every recoverable data core. When it was finished, the Pioneer's entire crew of 23 had been rescued, along with their research data, personal belongings, even the ship's cat, a small Earth creature that had somehow survived the crash by hiding in the ship's food storage compartment. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Day stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. Looking out at the council ships that had escorted them to the rescue site, Commander Yuki stood beside him, still trying to process everything he had witnessed. Admiral Yuki said quietly, "Your people saved lives today that no other species in the galaxy could have saved. You have technology we can barely comprehend, military capabilities that could reshape the balance of power, and you use it all to ... to help people." Day smiled, but there was sadness in his expression. "Commander, every human grows up knowing that survival isn't guaranteed. We live on a world where a single mistake can kill you, where natural disasters can wipe out entire cities, where predators hunt in packs, and the weather itself is your enemy. But we also learn that the only way to survive is to work together, to watch each other's backs, to never leave anyone behind. But surely your world can't be as dangerous as the legends suggest." Captain June laughed from her station. "Commander, would you like to see some vacation footage from Earth?" It's the main screen filled with images that made Yuki's blood freeze. Humans surfing on waves that were taller than buildings, climbing mountains that reached into the stratosphere, swimming with creatures that could swallow spacecraft whole. But most terrifyingly, they were smiling while they did it. "This is what humans do for fun," June explained. "For relaxation." 6 months later, when a cosmic storm threatened to sterilize the Zephyrian home colonies, the Galactic Council's emergency session lasted exactly 12 minutes. The decision was unanimous. Call the humans. The response came within hours. Not weapons, not demands for payment or territorial concessions, but a fleet of ships loaded with atmospheric processors, radiation shields, and evacuation vessels. The humans didn't just save the Zephyrian colonies, they improved them, leaving behind technology that would protect the worlds from future cosmic events. Commander Yuki, serving as the Council's permanent liaison to humanity, stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable as it completed another rescue mission. This time it had been a mining accident on the Kronar homeworld, where 300 workers had been trapped in collapsed tunnels that were flooding with toxic gases. "I think I'm finally beginning to understand," Yuki said to Admiral Diaz. They watched the last of the rescued miners being loaded onto medical transports. "Your people aren't just strong because of your world's dangers. You're strong because you've learned that strength without compassion is meaningless." Admiral Day nodded, watching the stars wheel past the observation windows. "Earth taught us that life is the most precious thing in the universe, Commander. Not territory, not resources, not power, life. Every human who reaches adulthood has survived challenges that would break most beings. But more importantly, they've learned that survival means nothing if you survive alone." As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Yuki finally understood the truth that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity wasn't the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. They were its greatest hope. They were the species that had looked into the abyss of a world that tried to kill them every day and decided that the proper response wasn't to become killers themselves, but to become protectors of all life. The galaxy had found its guardians, and they came from the one world everyone thought was uninhabitable. In learning to survive hell, humans had become something unprecedented, a species powerful enough to conquer the galaxy, but wise enough to save it instead. The end.